Did you know that you can disable Warden spawning in the game? Yes, it's as simple as that. You wander around the ancient city, gathering your loot and not worrying about anything. You can also disable the appearance of phantoms or fire damage, make the weather infinitely clear, turn off wandering traders, and even save your inventory after a player's death. The game rules are responsible for all of this. There are countless of them. Well, 64 actually. Today I will show them to you and you will learn something new. When you create a world on Java or Bedrock, you can choose the game rules you want. On the one hand, they can simplify life, such as disabling the Warden spawning, and on the other hand, on the opposite, complicate, such as the health regeneration only from potion or golden apples. They can also be changed directly in the game with the special command /gamerule and rule name. Very convenient. And now let's take a look at what the developers have come up with. Achievements in Minecraft are one of my favorite things. There are more and more of them with each version. Once they are complete, they are displayed in the general chat. This may be annoying to some people, so the announceAdvancements rule disables the chat messages from appearing after the achievement is completed. Every time you blow up dynamite or something else, the game randomly drops the blocks that fell out after the explosion. This is intentional, because they are essentially destroyed after the explosion. The blockExplosionDropDecay rule is responsible for this. If the value is set to false, all blocks will be dropped as items after the explosion. I hope you are familiar with this. Command block. It allows you to use various commands and even build mechanisms. In survival, this block cannot be reached, but you can disable this block using the rule commandBlocksEnabled. Continuing the theme of the command blocks, when they work, then in the chat appears messages with exactly they have done or are doing at the moment. Sometimes it can be annoying, so using the rule commandBlockOutput, you can disable the appearance of these messages. There are 3 special commands in Minecraft: fill, clone, and fill biome. You can read about each of them on the wiki, but for example, with the first one we can fill selected spaces with the blocks we need, but this command has its own limit on the amount of these blocks. With the help of commandModificationBlockLimit rule, we can increase this volume up to 32,768 blocks. Fast movement in servers is always a pain. Due to the optimization problems, fast movement slows down due to the server overload. Sometimes this applies to Elytras, because they fly pretty fast and the server can be unable to cope, therefore kind of kicking players out of the server because it checks the movement speed every time. disableElytraMovementCheck disables the player's movement speed check, and the server stops checking the flight speed. After update 1.14, each of us could either accidentally or intentionally cause a Pillager's raid in the village. This is quite normal. The disableRaids rule is to turn off the raid appearance in general, with the bad omen effect still present in the game. Even if you enable this command during a raid, the raid will stop, but the raid members will not disappear. The cycle of night and day in Minecraft holds many secrets, such as the phases of the moon, which affected different mobs. Sometimes you want to make it so that the cycle of a certain time of the day lasts permanently. To achieve this, using the command select the desired time and then using the rule doDaylightCycle, disable the change of day and night. In the game we have roughly speaking 2 types of entities, mobs and blocks. With mobs everything is clear. They are those who can move on their own, but entity blocks are something else entirely. Boats, frames, armor stands, and so on. The doEntityDrops rule disable all entity blocks from dropping, so breaking a frame won't drop anything, breaking a ball won't drop the same thing, and so on. When setting fire to a village or forest in Minecraft, a player doesn't think about the fact that it can lead to a giant fire. But if you use the rule doFireTick, you can avoid it. After all, it blocks the possibility of natural spread of fire, not only from players but from the game as a whole. Voting for mobs in 2017 will be remembered by all players for a long time, all because of Phantom. Then even those who voted for him lost. Every few days, if the player does not sleep, a group of phantoms appear and attack him, forcing him to go to bed. This will be happen until the player goes to sleep, but the doInsomnia rule will be able to disable the phantoms from appearing in the world and allow the player to stay awake forever. After your character dies in the game, you see 2 buttons on the screen, respawn or main menu, as well as your score and the reason of death. If you don't care about this and want to revive instantly after death, the doImmediateRespawn rule will help you with this problem. The recipe book has appeared relatively recently, but it is extremely useful. From the very beginning, all recipes are not available here, and the player has to discover them by exploring the game. For example, the bot recipe is unlocked after the player first enters the water block. There is a special rule doLimitedCrafting, which will forbid players to create blocks in items which recipes have not yet been discovered. Almost all mobs in the game after death leave experience and drop. The only exception is baby mobs. Here everything is clear. If suddenly for some reason you want to make it so that from any mobs are not dropped experience and drops, then you need to enable the game rule doMobLoot. Sometimes we want to make it so that hostile mobs do not appear in the world. Then we just need to turn on peaceful difficulty. But what about other mobs? What if I want to stay on normal difficulty? Then the doMobSpawning rule will help us. It will disable the natural spawning of mobs, but at the same time mobs in structures, from spawners and mobs from events will still be able to spawn the game. After the villagers and pillagers update, wandering around the world we can sometimes come across a small group of pillagers led by a captain. This is a patrol. They sometimes spawn near villagers or near our houses. The doPatrolSpawning rule will prevent them from appearing in the game, but not the pillagers themselves. In case you suddenly didn't know, the game even has an option to fully ban any blocks from falling out. The game rule doTileDrops will completely disable the dropping of blocks in the form of items. You will destroy them, but you will not get anything. Wandering Trader. Yes, it's a pain. In recent versions, he has become even a little bit useful, but sometimes he comes too often. It can be a bit stressful. That's why the doTraderSpawning rule will help you to disable the appearance of any wandering traders in the game. In case you didn't know, the vines in the game are constantly growing. It's because of this the game can lag so much in the jungle. After all, it tries to calculate every tick which block should grow. The doVinesSpread rule will prohibit the growth of vines in the game, but only regular vines. Other species can grow further. Some players don't like rain. Sometimes when playing for a long time it appears too often and ruins gameplay a bit. To avoid this, there is a special rule, doWeatherCycle. It forbids the weather to change naturally. That is, for example, by setting clear weather, you will no longer see thunderstorm or rain. The same can be said vice versa. Extremely convenient. It was new for me that some players don't know about the existence of the doWardenSpawning rule. If you are afraid of Warden, or if you are afraid to be in the ancient city in general, this rule will disable the appearance of this mob. You will still hear Skulk Shriekers, but they will not summon Warden. In order to not to suffocate underwater, in the game there is a special potion of water breathing. If you're lacking it, drowningDamage will be able to disable the damage from lack of air underwater. The game rule enderPearlsVanishOnDeath appeared relatively recently. It is responsible for whether the ender pearls thrown by player will disappear after his death during the throw. I honestly can't imagine why this rule was added. If you know, give me a hint in the comments. To not to be afraid of falling and crashing to the ground, you can train your skills to wield a bucket of water. It will extinguish the damage from falling, well as the rule fallDamage. Once enabled, any player will not take fall damage. Fire in the game is a dangerous thing. Like I said, you can do a lot of damage. The fireDamage rule will help avoid fire damage, while still allowing the player to be set on fire, so you have to be careful. Not only humans, but also natural mobs can be vindicative. In general, the game is made so that after natural mob killed the player, he lost interest in him. Roughly speaking, he took revenge. But with the rule forgiveDeadPlayers, this can be turned off, so even after the death of the player, mobs will attack him. To be honest, powder snow is a pain in the ass. When you need to get over the high mountain and you don't have leather boots on hand, get ready to take a lot of freeze damage. The freeze damage rule will help avoid this, and the player will not take damage from powder snow. Sometimes when playing on servers, you may hear the eerie sounds of wither summoning. It is often unexpected and it is frightening. Therefore, the game rule global sound events will disable these sounds for other players, but not for those who created them. In Minecraft, there is a special command/function. It is responsible for activating a special function that is presented in the game code. Rule function commandLimit will help to set the number of commands that can perform this function. Probably one of the most popular and quite old game rules, keep inventory. It helps to keep all the player's inventory after his death. This is an extremely handy feature that can help newcomers and in general people who want to play for themselves. Be honest, you tried to create an infinity source of lava once, didn't you? That's quite normal, I was exactly the same. It wasn't possible before, but with the lava source conversation rule, everyone can create as much lava as they want. When you create your own server, you have the ability to control it through their console. You as an admin can write anything you want there, but know that almost every action will be logged. To avoid this, you need to enable the rule log admin comments, which will not record the the actions of administrator. The command block can do a lot, but it has a limit of the length of the chain of commands it can execute. With help of the max command chain length, this limit can be increased or, on the opposite, decreased. The same applies to the command max command fork count. It is responsible for maximum number of forks that create and use the commands of Minecraft when executing. When the player gets into a room where there are too many entities, he starts taking damage. The rule max entity cramming will be able to increase or decrease the maximum number of pushed mobs before taking damage. The next game rule, minecart max speed, is still available only in experimental mode, but it is a sin to not tell about it. With it, you can increase or decrease the speed of movement on minecarts. This is a very convenient function. When a monster interacts with blocks, for example creeper, after its explosion there is a reminder hole, from which drops a random number of blocks. The game rule mob_explosion_drop_decay will make each block remain in the form of an object laying on the floor. If you don't like the way mobs can interact with blocks in general, the mob griffin rule will prevent them from doing so. But note that this will not only disable creeper explosion and block picking by enderman, but everything in general. Rabbits won't be able to eat carrots crops, foxes won't be able to eat berries from bushes, piglins won't be able to pick up gold, and much more. Regular hardcore is solar sentry. Ultra hardcore is the way to go. To create such challenge, you just need to turn off the command natural regeneration. The player will be able to regenerate health only with related items, golden apples and regeneration potions. The time of transition to the nether portal when the player is in creative mode can be controlled by rule player's nether portal creative delay, and we can also control the same time only when the player is in survival mode. The rule player's nether portal default delay is responsible for this. When you play on the server, in order to skip the night, all players must go to the bed at the same time, which of course is very difficult, because some players may be far away and without the ability to create a bed. Therefore, the rule player sleeping percentage will allow you to set the right numbers of players to skip the night as a percentage. Did you know that you have the ability to destroy decorated pots, dripstones and similar blocks with projectiles? It's very simple and in one way even convenient. The projectiles can break blocks rule will prevent any projectiles from destroying such blocks. I don't know why this rule exists only on Bedrock, because it's super convenient. The PvP rule will forbid or allow you to deal damage to each other during the game. All of you know that in Minecraft time is counted with the help of game ticks. The rule random tick speed will be able to speed up the time for which the game calculates different actions. Thus, you can speed up the process of growing different crops or disappearance of leaves and many other things. At high values, the game starts to lag. Today in the video, I mentioned the fact that to open a new recipe, first the player needs to get a new block or do some action. The recipe unlock rule is responsible for whether the player needs to do something to unlock a new recipe. The debug menu is both useful and cheatable at the same time. To leave only harmless information, you can use the reduce debug info rule. It will hide most of debug menu, but it will also forbid to view entity hitboxes and chunk borders. Have you ever tried to sleep in nether or end? I think everyone has. The bed would then explode and deal damage. The same goes for the respawn anchor in overworld and end. To prevent the explosion, there is a rule respawn blocks explode. Unfortunately, it also only works on Bedrock. Every time a player writes some comments in chat, after its execution, the game sends some kind of report, what it did. For example, it sets the time, changes the game mode, and so on. The send command feedback rule will disable such messages after comments are executed. In Bedrock, there is a special border block. It serves as a boundary block. You cannot build or dig under or over it. There is a small red particles coming from it. The show border effect rule will disable the display of these particles. Also in Bedrock, you can separately display the coordinates of the player, because in this version there is a no debug menu. The rule show coordinates will disable the display of coordinates on which the player is located. A very useful thing in Bedrock is demonstration of the days spent in the game. Java has such a thing, only again in the debug menu. Sometimes it's difficult to find this line among tons of unnecessary information. On Bedrock there is a separate slider that displays the number of days. It is extremely convenient. With the help of the show days played rule, it can be also disabled. Chat in the game is very tricky thing. While playing on the server, it can tell you a lot about you. For example, what achievement you have completed or when you died and for what reason. This can of course be disabled by using the show death messages rule. As I said before, after a player performs certain actions or gets a block, he opens a recipe in the game. This can be realized by the tooltip in the upper right corner of the screen. If you are suddenly annoyed, it can be disabled using the rule show recipe messages. Using various commands, you can make a small lore for an item or a block. It will be shown in the tooltips after you point your mouse at it. Using the show text rule, you can disable the showing of this information. When the player is in winter biomes, it often snows there. In real life, if the weather is is below freezing outside, the snow doesn't melt but only accumulates on top of each other. In Minecraft, this can also be done with the snow accumulation height rule. It is responsible for the numbers of layers of snow that will accumulate on top of each other. I have already told many times about the spawn chunks. These are those chunks that are always loaded, regardless of whether there is a player or not. Their number can be controlled by the rule spawning chunk radius, but you need to be careful. If there are too many of them, the game will start to lag. When a character dies in the game, he is revived, unless of course it is hardcore. If we have a respawn point, we will appear near it, if not at the first spawn point, so we can appear in a certain radius of our spawn. With the help of the rule spawn radius, this radius can be increased or decreased. When the player is in spectator mode, the game does not consider him as a full-fledged player. He cannot generate new or old chunks, only the one he is in. The spectators generate chunks rule can allow a player in spectator mode to generate new chunks. Dynamite in the game is a useful thing, but quite tricky. If you don't want them to explode, just use the rule TNT explodes. It will either enable or disable TNT detonation. We had a rule that was responsible for dropping blocks after dynamite explosion, but this time the rule TNTExplosionDropDecay will be responsible for dropping all blocks that were close to the explosion epicenter. The further the explosion is, the more blocks will survive. Natural mobs in the game attack only those who provoke them, but what if they attack any players after provocation? Yes, this can also be achieved with the command Universal Anger. With friends on the server, it will be a lot of fun. From just 2 blocks of water, we have the possibility to create an infinite source of water. This has always been the case, and hopefully it will continue to be the same. With the water source conversation rule, you can forbid the creation of new water sources in the game as a whole. As far as I understand, these are all the game rules so far. I will note that in each new version there is new rules, so you should be careful. In the description I will leave a list of all the rules that I have mentioned today, and also on this page will appear new ones. Which of rules have you already used and which ones will you start using? Write in the comments. While you're waiting for the new video, you can watch this. They are also very interesting. Subscribe to this channel, put thumbs up and click on the bell. We'll hear from you again, because we are discovering Minecraft in a new way.